The emergency beacon screamed through space for 3 days before anyone heard it. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UTS Horizon, staring at the red warning lights that covered his console like angry eyes. The message was simple and terrible. Colony Kepler 44 to be had gone silent, and the last transmission spoke of death coming from the shadows. How many people lived on that rock? Jake asked his security chief, Commander Nick Patterson, who stood behind him with arms crossed over his chest. 2,000 miners and their families, Nick replied, his voice tight with worry. Mostly families. Captain kids. Dr. Lisa Carter, the ship's chief scientist, looked up from her datapad with concern written across her face. The colony was supposed to be safe. No hostile wildlife on the planet, no dangerous weather patterns. It was perfect for families. Jake rubbed his tired eyes. 3 months into their deep space survey mission, and now this. The Terran Federation had sent them to map the Outer Rim territories, looking for new worlds to colonize. To find empty planets and catalog resources, not rescue colonies from unknown threats. Set course for Kepler 4 for 2B, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. The Horizon was not a warship. It carried scientists, engineers, and surveyors, not soldiers. Their weapons were basic defense systems meant to scare off pirates, not fight whatever. Had destroyed an entire mining colony, but Jake knew they were the only ship close enough to help, and he would not abandon 2,000 people without trying. The journey took 18 hours. When they arrived at Kepler 4 for 2B, the planet looked peaceful from orbit. Green continents and blue oceans spun slowly beneath white clouds. Nothing seemed wrong until they tried to contact the colony. Silence. Life signs. Jake asked Chief Engineer. Pete Brooks worked at his console, running deep scans of the planet's surface. I'm reading maybe 300 humans still alive, Captain. They're scattered across the northern continent, hiding in small groups. What happened to the other 1,700? Nick demanded. Pete's face went pale. I don't know, sir. No bot is showing on thermal scans. It's like they just disappeared. Jake felt ice form in his stomach. 1,700 people did not just vanish. Something had taken them, and that something might still be down there with the survivors. Prepare a landing party, Jake ordered. Full protective gear. Dr. Carter, I want you to analyze anything we find. Pete, bring portable scanners and emergency medical supplies. Nick, arm everyone but keep weapons on stun setting until we know what we're dealing with. Captain Dr. Carter said softly, maybe we should try to contact the survivors first. Find out what happened before we go down there. Jake nodded. Good idea. Open a channel to the colony's emergency frequency. The voice that answered was barely a whisper, filled with terror. This is Colony Administrator Ray Cooper. Who is this? Please tell me you're human. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UTS Horizon. We received your distress signal. What's your situation down there? Got then, Captain, thank God. We've been hiding for 4 days. They came at night, moving through the buildings like ghosts. Big things, taller than any man, with claws that could cut through steel doors. They took people, Captain, grabbed them, and dragged them away into the darkness. How many of these creatures? Jake asked. You think maybe a dozen? They hunt in groups, working together like they're smart, really smart. They don't just kill, Captain. They study us first, learn our patterns, then strike when we're weakest. Dr. Carter leaned forward. Ray, this is Dr. Carter. Can you describe them in more detail? Size, appearance, behavior? 8 feet tall, maybe more. Dark skin like armor. Claws on their hands and feet. They move onto legs, but can run on all fours when they want speed. And their eyes, Doctor. Their eyes glow in the dark like burning coals. Jake exchanged looks with his crew. It sounded nothing like any known species in Federation databases. Ray, we're coming down to get you and the other survivors, Jake said. Can you reach the main landing pad safely? No, Captain, they watch. The open areas during the day, we can only move through the underground tunnels, and even then, we have to be careful. They seem to hear everything. Jake made his decision. We'll come to you then. Send us your coordinates. We'll use the shuttle. And land as close as possible. 20 minutes later, Jake found himself walking through the ruins of what had been a thriving mining colony. Buildings stood with their walls torn open, metal twisted like paper. Claw marks scored the ground and walls, deep gouges that spoke of incredible strength. Captain Dr. Carter called from beside a destroyed housing unit. You need to see this. Jake walked over to where she knelt beside strange markings in the dirt. They looked like symbols carved into the ground with deliberate care. These aren't random, she said. This is some kind of writing or marking system. Whatever did this is intelligent, possibly more intelligent than we thought. Nick appeared at Jake's shoulder, his weapon ready. Captain, I found something else. Blood trails leading away from the colony, but they stop about a mile out. Like whatever was carrying people just flew away. Jake studied the alien markings, his mind working through possibilities.
How long?
How long would it take an intelligent species to study human behavior patterns if they were watching a colony? Depends on their intelligence level, she replied. A few days to understand basic routines, maybe a week to predict individual behavior patterns. The colony went silent 4 days ago, Jake said slowly. Ray said they studied the colonists before attacking. These things have been watching humans for at least a week, learning everything about how we live and work. A chill ran down Jake's spine as he realized what this meant. These creatures were not just predators. They were hunters who studied their prey before striking, intelligent enough to plan and patient enough to wait for the perfect moment. Captain, Pete's voice crackled through the comm system. I'm picking up movement on the scanner. Multiple contacts heading this way from the east. Big ones. Jake grabbed his comm unit. All teams returned to the shuttle immediately. We have incoming hostiles. As they ran toward their landing craft, Jake caught sight of something moving in the shadows between buildings. Something tall and dark, watching them with glowing eyes. It did not attack or chase them, simply watched, as if studying these. New humans who had arrived on its hunting ground. The shuttle lifted off, just as more shadows appeared around the landing site. Jake counted at least 8 large figures emerging from hiding places they had not even noticed. The creatures had been there all along, invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. As the horizon broke orbit, Jake stared down at the planet below and realized they were dealing with something far more dangerous than simple predators. These beings were intelligent, organized, and patient. They had turned an entire world into their personal hunting preserve, and now they knew humans were coming. The real question was, what would they do with that knowledge? The hunting party stood in the ancient stone chamber deep beneath the planet's surface. Waralfa Kenth, leader of the 12 Ractor warriors, studied the metal device they had taken from the human shuttle. His massive claws traced the edges of the communication unit with surprising care. The prey speaks to others among the stars, Hunter Prime Zara said, her voice a low growl that echoed off the stone walls. They call for help. Kent's burning orange eyes fixed on the device. In 3,000 years of hunting, he had never encountered prey that could summon reinforcements from beyond their world. It made the hunt more interesting. How many ships do they command? He asked. Unknown Waralfa. But their vessel carries advanced weapons and shields. These humans are not like the soft creatures we have hunted before. Kent bared his teeth. In what might have been a smile, the Ractor had dominated this sector of space for countless generations, keeping dozens of species in line through controlled hunting. Most prey ran screaming when they saw a Vractor warrior. These humans had seen as hunters and still chose to land on the planet to rescue their weak ones. Gather the pack, Kenth commanded. We have new prey to study. Above ground, Captain. Jake Morrison paced the bridge of the horizon like a caged animal. 3 days had passed since their failed rescue attempt, and the survivors on the planet were still trapped. Worse, long-range scanners showed more ships approaching the system. Captain Lieutenant Amy Foster called from the communications station. "I'm receiving a transmission. It's not human." Jake stopped pacing. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was deep and rough, speaking English with an accent Jake had never heard before. "Human vessel. I am War Alpha Kenth of the Vractor hunting pack. Your people below have provided good sport, but now you interest us more." Dr. Carter moved to Jake's side, her scanner recording every word. "Captain, the language patterns suggest high intelligence. This isn't some primitive predator. What do you want?" she asked the alien voice. "We want to hunt you, human Jake Morrison. Your kind shows promise as worthy prey. We offer you the honor of the great chase." "The what?" "By ancient law, worthy. Prey receives 3 days to prepare. Use this time well. Let's learn the land, gather your weapons, say your goodbyes. On the 4th dawn, the hunt begins. If you survive 7 days, we will consider your species worthy of respect." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "And if we don't survive, then your people below will feed us well, and we will hunt your ships until no humans remain in our territory." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Commander Nick Patterson was the first to speak. "Captain, we need to call for backup. The Federation fleet can be here in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is too long," Jake replied. "The colonists won't last that long, and these Vractor will start hunting other human settlements." Her scanner readings. "Captain, I think we should consider their offer. This great chase sounds like some kind of ritual. If it's part of their culture, there might be rules we can use." "You want us to let them hunt us?" Nick demanded. "Want us to survive long enough to find another solution?" Jake said. "Hey, Pete, what's our situation for ground operations?" Chief. Engineer Pete Brooks looked up from his console. "Not good, Captain. We've got mining equipment, basic tools, some emergency shelters. Nothing designed for combat against creatures that can tear through steel." Jake walked to the main view screen and stared down at the planet below. Somewhere in those mountains and forests, 300 human colonists were hiding in darkness, waiting for rescue that might never come. Above them, alien hunters prepared for a deadly game that would determine the fate of every human in the mat. "Sector. We go down," Jake decided. "But we don't just run and hide. We studied these Vractor the same way they've been studying us." 3 hours later, Jake stood on the planet's surface with his entire crew. They had landed near the ancient ruins where the alien transmission had originated. A complex of stone buildings that looked older than human civilization. "Readings show the structures are at least 50,000 years old," Dr. Carter reported. "But someone's been maintaining them. Stonework is perfect. No weathering or decay." Nick pointed to claw marks carved deep into the stone walls. "These match the marks we found at the colony. The Vractor have been using this place for a long time." Jake studied the ruins with new understanding. This was not just a hunting ground. It was a temple, a place where these aliens practiced their deadly rituals. The thought made him angry. How many species had died here over the centuries? How many families torn apart by creatures who saw intelligent life as nothing more than sport, Captain, Pete called from deeper in the ruins. "Need to see this?" Jake followed Pete's voice to a large chamber filled with strange symbols carved into every wall. In the center stood a stone altar stained dark with age. "It's a trophy room," Dr. Carter whispered, her voice filled with horror. "These symbols represent different species they've hunted. Look at this one. Bipedal, tool-using, social structure, similar to humans." Ouch. 43 different species, each one marked with numbers that might represent successful hunts. The Vractor were not just predators, they were collectors, systematically hunting intelligent life across the galaxy. "How long have they been doing this?" Jake asked. Based on the wear patterns and carving techniques, at least 10,000 years, Dr. Carter replied. "Maybe longer." A sound echoed through the chamber, a deep rumbling that might have been laughter. Jake spun around to see a massive figure standing in the doorway. 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales that looked like natural armor, with glowing, orange eyes that seemed to burn in the dim light. You learn quickly. Human Jake Morrison, the creature said, in perfect English. Few prey species take time to study their hunters, most simply run screaming into the night. Jake stepped forward, fighting every instinct that told him to run. You're Kenth. War Alpha Kenth. Yes. I've come to see what makes you different from the others we have taken. We don't run because we're not prey, Jake said, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. We're humans. We fight back. Kenth tilted his massive head, studying Jake like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. All prey fights when cornered. But you came to this place of death by choice. You seek to understand us rather than simply flee. This is new. We came here to rescue our people. Your people are already dead, or soon will be, yet you remain. Why? Jake met the alien's burning gaze. Because that's what humans do. We don't abandon our own. Even when abandoning them would save your life. Especially then. Kenth made that rumbling sound again. It will be interesting to hunt, Jake Morrison. Use your 3 days well. Learn this place. Prepare your defenses. Gather your courage. When the hunt begins, show us what humans are truly capable of. The massive alien turned and disappeared into the shadows. Moving with impossible silence for something so large, Jake looked around at his crew, seeing fear and determination in equal measure on their faces. They had 3 days to turn the ancient hunting ground into a fortress, 3 days to prepare for a battle against creatures that had never lost a hunt. But as Jake stared at the alien symbols covering the walls, he began to form a plan. The Vractor followed rules, ancient traditions that governed their hunts. If he could understand those rules, maybe he could find a way to use them. Maybe humans could show these hunters something they had never seen before. The explosion shook the ancient stone walls as Pete Brooks finished setting the last trap. 2 days of the 3-day grace period had passed, and the humans had turned the old ruins into a maze of hidden surprises. Motion sensors connected to mining charges, tripwires linked to flashbang grenades, and carefully placed barriers that would force the Vractor hunters into kill zones. That should slow them down, Pete said, wiping sweat from his forehead as he climbed down from the stone. Archway where he had been working, Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical display on his portable scanner. Red dots marked every trap, every defensive position, every escape route they had prepared. It looked impressive on the screen, but he knew it would not be enough. The Vractor had been hunting for thousands of years. They would expect traps. Word from the survivors in the colony? Jake asked Lieutenant Amy Foster, who monitored communications from a concealed position near the central chamber. Ray Cooper's group is still alive, but barely, Amy reported. They say the Vractor have been testing their defenses, probing for weak spots. 2 more groups went silent yesterday. Jake closed his eyes, fighting down the anger that threatened to cloud his judgment. Every hour they spent preparing for this hunt, more colonists died. But rushing into a fight they could not win would only get everyone killed faster. Captain, Dr. Lisa Carter called from across the chamber. I think I've found something important. Jake walked over to where Lisa knelt beside a section of wall covered in older carvings. These symbols looked different from the hunting trophies they had found earlier. More primitive, but somehow more significant. These are older than the others, Lisa explained. Much older. And look at this symbol here. It shows a Vractor and another creature working together, not hunting. Working together how? I'm not sure, but the pattern repeats throughout this section. Different species, but always the same relationship. Partnership, not predation. Commander Nick Patterson appeared. At Jake's shoulder, his weapon ready as always. Could be propaganda, Captain, making their victims think they had a choice. No, Lisa said firmly. The carving technique is completely different. This predates their hunting culture by thousands of years. I think the Vractor weren't always predators. Jake studied the ancient symbols with growing interest. If Lisa was right, then something had changed the Vractor from partners to hunters. The question was, what? And whether that change could be reversed. A low rumble echoed through the ruins. It's different from the sounds they had heard before. Jake grabbed his comm unit. All positions. Report. Movement on the north perimeter, came Pete's voice. Big shapes, but they're not attacking, just watching. South perimeter clear, reported Nick from his position. East side has activity too, Amy added. They're surrounding us, but keeping their distance. Jake felt his stomach tighten. The 3-day grace period was not over yet, but the Vraktor were already positioning themselves for the hunt. He was about to order his people to defensive positions when a familiar voice called out from the chamber entrance. Human Jake Morrison, I would speak with you. War Alpha Kenth stood in the doorway, but he was not alone. 2 other Vraktor flanked, him both smaller than their leader, but still massive by human standards. What caught Jake's attention was their condition. Both aliens showed signs of recent injury. Deep cuts across their arms and torso, barely healed wounds that spoke of a recent battle. I am listening, Jake said, not moving from his position near the ancient carvings. These are Hunter Prime Zara and Hunter Prime Voss, Kenth said, indicating his companions. They were injured in a territorial dispute with another pack. By our laws, injured hunters who cannot keep pace with the pack must be left behind to die with honor. Jake looked at the wounded aliens, seeing pain in their burning eyes despite their attempts to hide it. What does this have to do with us? Nothing, Kenth replied. I tell you this so you understand what happens next is not weakness, but law. The War Alpha turned and walked away, leaving the 2 injured hunters standing alone in the doorway. Jake could see the conflict in their posture, pride, warring with pain as they struggled to remain upright. Captain Nick whispered urgently, this could be a trap. They want us to lower our guard. Jake studied the 2 aliens. Zara was bleeding from a deep gash along her left arm. Voss favored his right leg, and Jake could see bone-deep claw marks. Across his chest, these were not fake injuries. The hunters were genuinely wounded, abandoned by their pack, according to their own laws. Lisa, Jake called softly, your medical kit. Can you treat alien injuries? I don't know, she replied. Their biology is completely different from ours. I might make things worse. Captain, you can't be seriously considering this, Nick said. They're predators. They've killed hundreds of colonists. Jake looked at the ancient symbols on the wall, then back at the 2 wounded hunters. An idea was forming in his mind, dangerous and probably stupid, but it might be their only chance. Lisa, bring your medical supplies, Jake ordered. Nick, lower your weapon, but stay alert. Sir, this is crazy, Nick protested. Maybe Jake agreed. But those symbols showed the Vraktor working with other species. If we can find a way back to that relationship, maybe we can stop this hunt before it destroys both our peoples. Jake walked slowly toward the wounded hunters, his hands visible and empty. Both aliens tensed, their claws extending instinctively, but they did not attack. Your leader abandoned you, Jake said calmly. But we don't have to. Hunter Prime Zara's eyes narrowed. What help us? Why? 'Cause that's what intelligent beings do for each other, Jake replied. We help those who need it, even if they're our enemies. We are not your enemies, Voss said through gritted teeth. We are your hunters. There is a difference, is there? Jake asked. Or is that just what you've been taught to believe? Dr. Carter approached with her medical kit, moving slowly and carefully. I'll need to scan them first, understand their physiology before I can help. Jake looked into Zara's burning eyes. Will you let us try? The wounded hunter studied Jake for a long moment, then slowly nodded. I will not die on my knees begging for mercy. But if you wish to delay the inevitable, I will not stop you. Lisa began running her medical scanner over Zara's wounds, while Jake knelt beside Voss to examine his injuries. The alien's blood was darker than human blood, almost black, and it had a strange metallic smell. The cuts are deep but clean, Lisa reported. I think I can seal them with surgical gel, but I'll need to synthesize a compatible formula first. 4. The next hour, Jake and his crew worked to save the lives of 2 beings who had come to hunt them. It was surreal, treating wounds on creatures that stood 8 feet tall and could tear a human apart with their bare hands. But as Lisa worked, something unexpected happened. The wounded hunters began to talk. You're not what we expected, Zara, said as Lisa sealed the gash on her arm. Most prey species flee in terror when they see us. You study us, prepare defenses, and now you heal our wounds. Why? Because we choose to, Jake replied. No one forced us to help you. We did it because we wanted to. Voss made a sound that might have been laughter. Choice. Interesting concept. We have not had choices for many generations. The hunt is all we know. It wasn't always that way, Jake said, gesturing to the ancient symbols on the wall. Your ancestors worked with other species. They chose cooperation over domination. Both hunters turned to look at the carvings, and Jake saw something he had not expected in their eyes. Recognition. First stage, Zara whispered. We thought those were myths. The stories say we were different then, Voss added. Before the great hunger drove us to hunt. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What great hunger? The wounded hunters exchanged glances, and Jake realized he had stumbled onto something significant, something that might change everything. The communication device in the ancient chamber crackled to life at dawn on the fourth day. War Alpha Kent's voice filled the stone room, but it carried a tension that had not been there before. Human Jake Morrison. The grace period has ended. The hunt begins now. Jake looked at the two wounded Rector, who had spent the night in the chamber with his crew. Zara and Voss sat against the far wall, their injuries bandaged with human medical supplies. Both aliens looked stronger than they had the day before, but their eyes held confusion and something that might have been conflict. We hear you, Kent, Jake replied into the communicator. But there's been a change in the situation. There are no changes in the hunt, human. Laws are absolute. Your laws say wounded hunters are abandoned to die alone, Jake said. What do those same laws say about wounded hunters who are saved by their prey? Silence stretched across the communication channel for nearly a minute. When Kent spoke again, his voice was different, uncertain. That is impossible. Prey does not save hunters. Tell that to Zara and Voss, Jake replied. They're alive because we chose to help them instead of letting them die. Another long pause. Jake could hear voices in the background. Other Vractors speaking in their own language, with what sounded like heated argument. This changes nothing, Kent finally said. But Jake could hear the doubt in his voice. The hunt continues. Actually, it doesn't, came a new voice over the communicator. Older, deeper, carrying the weight of tremendous authority. I am Elder Seer Thane of the High Temple, Rolf Kent. You will cease all hunting activities immediately and await my arrival. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. He had hoped that saving the wounded hunters might create some kind of diplomatic opening, but this sounded like something much bigger. Elder Seer? Kent's voice carried a note of panic. The prey species has shown no mercy bind. They merely silence. Thane commanded. I have reviewed the quantum recordings from Hunter Prime, Zara and Hunter Prime Voss. The mercy bind has been invoked for the first time in 1,000 years. All hunting activities are suspended until this matter is resolved. The communication ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. What is the mercy bind? Dr. Lisa Carter asked the two wounded Vractor. Zara looked uncomfortable, her claws scraping against the stone floor. It is ... ancient law. From the time before the Great Hunger, when our people were different. Different how? Jake pressed. Voss spoke slowly, as if reciting something learned long ago. In the First Age, when the Vractor were dying from the plague that consumed our homeworld, we scattered across the stars seeking help. Many species turned us away, seeing us as dangerous predators, but some ... some showed mercy. They took in our wounded, shared their medicine, gave us shelter when we had nothing to offer in return, Zara continued. The mercy bind was created to honor such acts. Any being who saves a Vractor life becomes protected under our highest laws. Jake felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. What happened to change that? Why did you become hunters? Instead of partners? The Great Hunger, both aliens said together, their voices heavy with old shame. Our homeworld was dying, Voss explained. The plague killed most of our people, made the rest desperate. Some Vractor began hunting the very species that had helped us, taking what they needed by force. It was easier than asking for help. The hunting became a tradition, Zara added. Generations passed and we forgot the mercy others had shown us. We remembered only that we were strong, that we could take what we wanted from the weak. Commander Nick Patterson, who had been listening from his guard position, spoke up. So you've been hunting innocent species for 1,000 years because your ancestors were too proud to ask for help? Both Ractor flinched at the harsh truth. In his words, "It is what we were taught," Zara said quietly. "The only way we knew to survive." But it wasn't the only way, Jake realized. The species that helped you in the First Age, they found another path. They chose cooperation over domination. Before anyone could respond, a new sound echoed through the ruins. The deep hum of a massive ship entering the atmosphere. Through the chamber's opening, Jake could see a vessel descending from the sky, easily 10 times larger than the horizon, and built like a cathedral of dark metal and glowing energy. "The Elderseer comes," Voss said, and there was fear in his voice. "He will judge whether the mercy-bind is valid." "If it is," Jake asked. "Then you become protected under our highest laws," Zara replied. "And those who saved us become bound to your service until the debt is repaid. And if it's not valid, then we die for the shame of being saved by prey, and you die for the presumption of claiming mercy-bind protection." Jake felt his stomach drop. By saving the wounded hunters, he had not just changed the rules of the game. He had bet the lives of his entire crew on an ancient law that might not apply to humans. Captain Amy Foster called from her communication station. "I'm receiving a transmission from that ship. They want to speak with you. Put it through." A voice that filled the chamber was ancient and powerful, speaking English with perfect precision. "I am Elderseer Thane. You are the human who claims mercy-bind protection. I am Captain Jake Morrison. We saved the lives of 2 wounded Vroctor because it was the right thing to do." "The right thing," Thane repeated, and Jake could hear amusement. In the ancient voice, such a simple concept, yet so difficult for most species to understand. "You claim no reward for your actions? No payment or advantage gained?" "None," Jake replied. "We helped them because they needed help, even knowing they came to hunt you. Especially knowing that." A long pause, then. "I am coming to your location. I must see this mercy with my own eyes and speak with those who received it."
I'll wait.
Dr. Carter was analyzing data on her scanner. Nick stood ready with his weapon. Pete worked on their defensive systems. Amy monitored communications. All of them had risked their lives based on his decision to show mercy to their enemies. Captain Zara said softly, "There is something else. You should know about the mercy bind." "What?" "If Elderseer Thane validates your claim, it will not just protect you from our hunting pack. It will send shockwaves through the entire Vractor Empire. Many of our leaders will see it as a threat to everything we have built over the last 1,000 years. A threat how? Because it proves there's another way," Voss answered. "A way that does not require domination or fear. If other species learn that mercy can bind the galaxy's greatest predators to their service, they may stop fearing us. And without fear, our entire power structure collapses." Jake understood. By showing mercy to 2 wounded hunters, he had not just saved their lives. He had challenged the foundation of an entire civilization built on predation and fear. The question now was whether that civilization would choose to change or fight to preserve its deadly traditions. Through the chamber opening, Jake could see the massive ship settling onto the planet's surface like a dark mountain. Whatever happened next would determine not just the fate of his crew and the colonists, but the future relationship between humans and the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Elderseer Thane was coming to judge whether mercy could truly bind those who had forgotten how to show it themselves. Elderseer Thane was the largest Vractor Jake had ever seen. Nearly 10 feet tall, his dark scales bore the scars of countless battles, and his orange eyes held the weight of centuries. He moved through the ancient chamber like a living mountain, examining every symbol on the walls with careful attention. Behind him came Waralfa Kenth and 6 other hunters, all keeping respectful distance from their elder. Jake noticed that Kenth would not meet his eyes. The other hunters seemed nervous in ways that 8-foot predators should never be. These carvings speak truth, Thane said, his voice echoing off the stone walls. The first age, when mercy flowed both ways between our people and others. I am old enough to remember the stories from those who lived in those times. Jake stood between his crew and the massive alien, trying to project confidence he did not feel. Then you know the mercy bind is real. I know the law exists, Thane replied. The question is whether it applies to your actions. He turned his burning gaze to Zara and Voss, who stood straighter under their elder's attention. Tell me exactly what these humans did. Zara spoke first, her voice clear and strong. We were wounded in combat with the Razak pack over territory rights. War Alpha Kenth followed ancient law and left us to die with honor. The humans found us abandoned and chose to treat our injuries. They had weapons, Voss added. They could have finished us icily while we were weak. Instead, their healer worked for hours to save our lives. And what did they ask in return? Thane inquired. Nothing, both wounded hunters said together. Thane studied Jake with those ancient eyes. You asked for nothing? No information about our weaknesses? No promise that they would spare your people? We asked them about their history, Jake replied, but only because we wanted to understand why the hunting started. We hope to find a way to stop the killing. The killing, Thane repeated slowly. You see our hunting as murder. I see it as a waste, Jake said, surprising himself with his boldness. You're intelligent, powerful, capable of great things, but you use those gifts to terrorize weaker species instead of building something better. War Alpha Kenth snarled at the insult, his claws extending. This prey dares to lecture us about silence, Thane commanded without raising his voice. Kenth immediately stepped back, his head bowed. Continue, human. Jake looked at the ancient symbols around them. Your ancestors worked with other species. They built alliances, shared knowledge, created something greater than any one race could achieve alone. Then the Great Hunger came, and fear made you forget who you really were. Fear, Thane mused. Yes, fear changed us. Fear of dying, fear of weakness, fear of needing others. So we chose to make others fear us instead. But it didn't work, Doctor. Lisa Carter spoke up, stepping forward with her scanner in hand. I've been analyzing the quantum signatures in these ruins. The technology here is thousands of years more advanced than anything the Vractor use now. Your ancestors were more powerful when they worked with allies than you are as hunters. Thane's eyes widened, and he gestured for Carter to continue. The carvings showed joint research projects, combined fleets, shared colonies, she explained. When the Vractor worked with other species, both sides became stronger. The hunting culture has actually made you weaker, not stronger. Possible, Kenth growled. We dominate this entire sector. You control it through fear, Jake corrected. But control isn't the same as strength. How many species would willingly help you now? How many would share their knowledge or fight beside you against a common enemy? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Vractor had spent 1,000 years building an empire based on fear, but empires built on fear were brittle. They had no true allies, no one who would stand with them when real threats emerged. Elder Seer, a new voice called from the chamber entrance. We have urgent news. Another Vractor warrior entered, but this one looked different. His scales bore markings Jake had not seen before, and he moved with desperate urgency. Report. Scout Leader Kane, Thane ordered. The Devourer fleets have been detected at the rim, Kane said, his voice tight with fear. 300 ships heading directly for the core worlds. They will reach Vractor space in 2 cycles. Jake saw something he had never expected to see in a Vractor's eyes. Genuine terror. Even Thane seemed shaken by the news. Who are the Devourers? Jake asked. A machine intelligence from beyond the galactic rim, Thane replied grimly. They consume entire worlds, turning all biological matter into resources for their fleet. We have fought them before, always alone, always barely surviving, always alone, Jake repeated, understanding dawning. 'Cause you have no allies. Thane looked at Jake with new respect. You see clearly, human? We face extinction, and we have no one to call for help, because we have taught the galaxy to fear us rather than trust us. An idea formed in Jake's mind, bold and possibly insane. What if that changed? What if the Mercy Bind could be the first step toward something bigger? Explain. The Mercy Bind, Jake said. Make Zara and Voss the first Vractor bound to serve humans. Then let us show the galaxy that the greatest predators in known space can be partners instead of masters.
Alpha.
Garfa, Kenth stepped forward angrily. You ask us to become servants to prey species. I ask you to become what your ancestors were. Jake replied, allies, partners, friends. And in return, Thane asked. Jake looked around the chamber at his crew, then at the wounded hunters who had started this impossible chain of events. In return, when the Devourers come, you won't face them alone. Humans will stand with you. And if other species see that the galaxy's most feared predators can work as equals with those they once hunted, maybe they'll stand with you too. Thane was quiet for a long moment, studying the ancient symbols on the walls. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of history. The Mercy Bind is validated, he declared. Hunter Prime Zara and Hunter Prime Voss are bound to serve Captain Jake Morrison until their debt is repaid. I hereby propose a new compact between our species. Not hunter and prey, but partners facing a common threat. Jake felt relief flood through him, followed immediately by the weight of responsibility. He had not just saved 2 lives or ended a hunt, he had potentially changed the course of galactic history. There is one more thing, Thane added. The Mercy Bind creates a sacred trust. If you betray it, if you use our bound warriors for evil purposes, the consequences will be severe. We won't betray it, Jake promised. Humans keep their word. 6 months later, Jake stood on the bridge of a new kind of ship. Half human technology, half Vractor engineering, crewed by both species working as equals. The UTS Friendship carried weapons that could crack moons and shields that could withstand starfire. But its real power lay in what it represented. Across the galaxy, other species had taken notice. The Arcturian Trade Federation had sent ambassadors. The Centauri Research Collective offered to share their technological advances. Even the mysterious Etherians had made contact, curious about these humans who had turned predators into protectors through simple acts of compassion. War Alpha Kenth, now serving as Jake's tactical advisor, approached with a report. The Devourer scouts have been detected in the outer systems. The combined fleet is ready to respond. Jake looked out at the massive armada gathering around them, human ships flying alongside Vractor hunters, Arcturian traders bringing supplies, Centauri scientists providing technological support. Of species working together against a common threat, signal the fleet, Jake ordered. All ships, prepare for jump to the contact zone. As the stars shifted around them, Jake reflected on how far they had come. The galaxy's greatest predators now served alongside their former prey, bound together not by fear or dominance, but by mutual respect and shared purpose. Mercy had indeed been the Vractor's mistake, but only because they had forgotten how to give it themselves. Now, as they've prepared to face an enemy that threatened all biological life in the galaxy, they had remembered something more powerful than the hunt. They had remembered how to hope.